The bus dropped me off just before sunrise. I hadn't slept in a real bed for 9 months, and all I wanted was the sound of that old wooden porch creaking under my boots. The cabin always sounded like it remembered me. But halfway up the dirt road, I stopped. There was a sign nailed into a tree. Timber Ridge Community, private property. I stood there longer than I should have, waiting for my brain to correct it. It didn't. My cabin had a porch light on. I never left the power running. I walked faster. My key still fit the lock, but the door beeped. A mechanical click I'd never heard before. The handle pulled back against me like the house rejected my hand. Then headlights exploded across the trees. Step away from the door. I turned, sheriff cruiser, phone cameras, strangers staring like I was the problem. I live here. The deputy didn't even hesitate. Sir, the Homeowners Association reports you're trespassing. For a second I honestly thought he was joking. I actually laughed. Then the handcuffs closed. My duffel bag hit the dirt beside my boots, still covered in sand from another country, while people recorded me getting arrested at my own cabin. And that was the moment I realized. A lot can go wrong if you're not careful. If you've ever dealt with an HOA power trip, stay with me, because this only gets worse before it gets unbelievable. Comment check the deed if you think paperwork always tells the truth. Like and subscribe. The evidence we uncover later completely flips this story. They released me just after noon. No apology. No explanation. Just paperwork, criminal trespass warning, folded in half like it meant nothing. I sat in the parking lot longer than I needed to, reading the same sentence over and over. You are not authorized to occupy the property. My property. The cabin wasn't just somewhere I lived. My grandfather built it by hand, logs cut from the same forest that surrounded it. When I was a kid, he used to say the land didn't belong to us, we belonged to it. I called my mom. She sounded relieved I was safe, then quiet when I mentioned the cabin. Apparently letters had been coming for months. Official ones. Stamped envelopes. Legal wording. She didn't understand them, thought it was taxes or zoning junk I'd handle when I got back. I checked my phone, dozens of missed calls from a number labeled Property Compliance Office. One voicemail. Failure to respond will result in corrective action and reassignment of use rights. Reassignment. I drove back toward the road leading to the cabin, but didn't make it far. There was a metal gate now. Clean. New. Expensive. And beyond it, a gravel road where my dirt trail used to be. A woman in a polo shirt stepped out of a white SUV before I even reached the keypad. She smiled the kind of smile you practice in a mirror. Welcome home, she said calmly. Then she held out a packet. HOA documents. Maps. Rules. At the top, Timber Ridge Residential Community Association. I told her she had the wrong land. She didn't argue. She just said, "You were notified repeatedly." The property was incorporated during development. Incorporated. I looked past her, cabins, street lamps, and rooftops where empty forest used to stand. That's when the realization hit me. They didn't think they made a mistake. They thought I disappeared. I didn't raise my voice. Not yet. I just asked her to open the gate. She didn't move. Instead, she pointed to a laminated map in the packet, neat lot lines, cul-de-sacs, and in the corner, a green square labeled Community Recreation Cabin. My cabin. For a second, I honestly thought it was a printing error. I told her the map was wrong. I even tried to laugh it off, like two adults fixing a clerical mistake. She kept smiling. That structure is now a shared amenity. Shared. I walked past her toward the keypad. The gate clicked, but not open. Locked tighter. A security truck rolled up behind me like it had been waiting. The guard already knew my name before I spoke. Sir, residents only. I showed him my driver's license address. He didn't even look down. Instead, he showed me a tablet, HOA property registry. My name wasn't there. That hit harder than the cuffs earlier. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The president's smile disappeared for half a second. Recording violates community policy. Policy. I asked her one simple question. Who told you I don't live there? She answered too fast. The previous owner forfeited usage after non-response. Previous owner. I didn't realize I'd stepped closer until the guard shifted his stance. Not aggressive, rehearsed. Like they'd practiced this moment. So I changed tactics. I asked for copies. All of it. Surveys. Votes. Notices. She handed me only the rules booklet. Nothing else. Small win, she wouldn't refuse if she had real proof. Then the bigger threat landed. A certified envelope was taped to the gate post. My name typed cleanly across it. Outstanding fines, maintenance assessments, legal fees. The total was more than the cabin had ever been worth. I looked back at her. She wasn't smiling anymore. Just waiting. That's when I understood this wasn't about convincing me. It was about exhausting me until I agreed I didn't belong. The next morning I went to the county records office. Fluorescent lights. Dusty counters. A clerk who looked like she'd seen every property argument in the county and didn't want another one. I gave her my parcel number. She typed, paused, then frowned. There's a corrected plat attached to this parcel. Corrected. She turned the monitor slightly toward me, new boundary lines, straight and clean, cutting across what used to be forest. My cabin sat inside a block labeled HOA common use land. I told her that wasn't possible. The land had been the same for decades. She didn't argue. She just printed the filing date. 8 months ago. While I was deployed. For a moment neither of us spoke. The printer sounded louder than it should have. I asked who filed it. A development company name, same one on the Timber Ridge sign. Then she lowered her voice a little. They've submitted a lot of corrections lately. Not a mistake. A pattern. Hope, until I opened the next document. A lien. Late fees. Maintenance fees. Administrative penalties. Legal review charges. Each month stacked on the last while I was overseas. The total was absurd. I said I never received notice. She pointed to a mailing address, my cabin. Certified letters sent to the very property they'd locked me out of. I drove back toward the gate and found someone using my porch. A couple unloading coolers, laughing like they were on vacation. I didn't walk up to them. Just stood at the fence line. The man waved casually. Nice place, right? HOA rental, hard to book. Rental. I called the HOA number again. This time a man answered. Calm voice. Professional. We're willing to settle. Sign a release and accept compensation. Compensation. For my own land. I didn't respond right away. The silence stretched long enough that he spoke again. You'd avoid legal trouble. That word stuck. Not avoid confusion. Not fix error. Legal trouble. I ended the call without speaking. Because for the first time, it sounded less like they were explaining, and more like they were warning me. That night I didn't go home. I parked across the highway from the gated entrance where I could just barely see the road leading to the cabin. Headlights passed occasionally, lighting the trees in short flashes, like the place only existed in pieces now. I told myself I was planning my next step. Really, I just didn't know where else to sit. The arrest kept replaying in my head. Not the cuffs, the phones. The looks. Strangers watching me like I was dangerous near my own door. I started wondering if I'd missed something before deployment. Some letter. Some rule. Some deadline normal people understood and I didn't. Maybe this was my fault. Fireworks from somewhere in the new neighborhood popped in the distance. My hands tightened on the steering wheel before my brain caught up, and that made me angrier than anything the HOA had done. I was reacting to sounds thousands of miles away, and paperwork I couldn't see. I almost called the number back to accept the settlement. Just end it. Walk away. Quiet life somewhere else. But then I opened my glove compartment looking for a pen, and found the small metal box I always kept documents in. Insurance copies. Old photos. A folded deed my grandfather made me carry just in case the world forgets who owns what. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The paper was worn soft at the creases. For the first time since the arrest, the situation didn't feel unreal. It felt deliberate. And that changed something. Not confidence. Just a quiet, stubborn refusal to disappear. The HOA meeting was held in what used to be open woodland. Now it was a polished community lodge, stone fireplace, glass walls, catered snacks laid out like it was a celebration. I stood outside for a full 10 seconds before opening the door. Inside, conversations dipped. Not silent, just lower. Controlled. I felt every eye measuring me. The HOA president stood near the front table, posture perfect, binder already open like she'd rehearsed this. I chose a seat in the second row. Not the back. Not the front. Neutral. When the meeting started, they didn't mention my name. They talked about landscaping, parking enforcement, holiday decorations. Normal things. Like my cabin wasn't currently listed on their website as a rentable amenity. My heart was pounding harder than it ever did overseas. Finally, during open comment period, I stood up. I didn't yell. I asked for clarification on the boundary correction filed 8 months ago. The room shifted. The developer, who had been leaning casually against the wall, straightened slightly. The president smiled. That matter has been resolved legally. Resolved. I asked for copies of the vote approving incorporation of my parcel. She flipped a page in her binder, too slowly. That information is internal. Internal. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table in front of me. I'm recording for documentation. Her jaw tightened. Recording violates HOA policy. I looked around the room. We're in a public county building. That was my first small win. A few neighbors glanced at each other. The developer stepped forward then. Confident. Smooth. He rolled out a large printed map across the table, glossy, color-coded, professional. It showed Timber Ridge Phase 2 expansion. My cabin sat in green. He tapped it with a pen. This structure was classified as abandoned and absorbed into common area under corrective filing. Abandoned. I felt heat rise in my chest. I was deployed, I said. Silence. Not loud silence, uncomfortable silence. Someone in the back whispered, "Deployed?" The president interjected quickly. Notice was sent repeatedly. I asked where. She answered without looking at me. To the listed address. My cabin, I said quietly. The room absorbed that. You could feel it. Threat, hope. Then worse threat. The security guard from the gate appeared at the doorway. The president cleared her throat. If this becomes disruptive, we will involve law enforcement. There it was again. That rehearsed escalation. An older woman in the second row stood up unexpectedly. Gray hair. Shaking hands. I've walked that trail for 30 years, she said. It was never abandoned. The president cut her off politely. Ma'am, please sit. But the crack had formed. Hope. Then bigger threat. The developer pulled out a document. A lien has been placed for unpaid assessments totaling. He read the number. Audible gasps. The amount sounded criminal. I felt a flicker of doubt. Was this already too far gone? That's when I did something I hadn't planned. I walked forward and placed a copy of my original deed beside his glossy map. The old paper looked fragile next to his color printout. But it had something his didn't. Dates. Signatures. Handwritten boundary descriptions. The developer didn't touch it. He just leaned back slightly. That hesitation was small. But I saw it. Small win. Then the bigger threat landed. A deputy entered the building. Not rushing. Calm. The president nodded toward me. We've received complaints of harassment. My stomach dropped. The cycle again. Humiliation rising. Phones came out. I didn't move. Didn't raise my voice. I handed the deputy the certified lien notice and the corrective plat copy from the county office. I'm requesting documentation access and clarification, I said evenly. The deputy scanned the paperwork. His posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Not toward me. Away from her. Power shift. The room wasn't laughing anymore. The developer's smile faded. The president's voice tightened as she explained procedures. The deputy didn't arrest anyone this time. He simply said, "This appears to be a civil matter," and stepped back. It wasn't victory. But it wasn't cuffs. As the meeting dissolved into murmurs, a teenager near the door whispered, "This is going online." I didn't think much of it. Until the next morning. My phone buzzed nonstop. Clips of the meeting, especially the moment I said I was deployed, were everywhere locally. The president threatening police. The developer calling my home abandoned. Public opinion had shifted. Hope again. Then worse danger. That afternoon I received notice that the developer had filed a civil suit claiming I was interfering with HOA operations and trespassing on common property. They weren't backing down. They were doubling down. But now something was different. I wasn't alone in the room anymore. People had seen it. Heard it. Felt it. And for the first time since the handcuffs clicked shut, I realized they weren't as confident as they pretended to be. Because confident people don't panic when someone presses record. I spread every document across my kitchen table. County copies. HOA packets. The lien notice. My grandfather's deed. At first it all looked like noise, legal language layered over legal language. The kind meant to make you stop reading halfway through. So I stopped trying to understand it, and just compared it. Line by line. That's when something felt wrong. The corrected plat had a signature authorizing boundary acknowledgement required for legacy parcels. I'd skimmed past it 3 times before. This time I pulled my grandfather's old letters from the metal box and laid one beside it. Same last name. Same initials. Same looping tail on the final letter. Too perfect. I didn't feel angry right away. Just cold. Because the date under the signature was 5 years after he died. I sat there staring long enough the room got quiet in that heavy way late nights do. I even checked online examples of his handwriting, hoping I was reaching. I wasn't. Someone had copied his signature onto a legal boundary approval. I replayed the HOA ribbon-cutting video next. Frame by frame. The developer laughing, talking to someone off camera. Yeah, we pushed the correction while he was deployed. Cleanest timing we'll get. I paused the video. For the first time, this didn't feel like a dispute, or negligence, or aggressive policy enforcement. It felt coordinated. The arrest. The fees. The pressure to settle quickly. They weren't trying to manage property. They were trying to make the real owner give up before he realized the paperwork wasn't real. And suddenly the settlement offer from earlier didn't sound generous anymore. It sounded like a deadline. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, because everything finally lined up. The arrest wasn't the event. It was step 3. Morning came and I walked into a local attorney's office with a folder that looked heavier than it should have been. He didn't interrupt while I talked. Just kept rearranging papers into neat stacks. When I showed him the signature, he stopped moving. "Where did you get this plat?" he asked. "County records." He leaned back slowly. "That's not just wrong," he said. "That's dangerous." Dangerous wasn't the word I expected. He explained carefully that legacy parcels sometimes require acknowledgement from prior ownership lines before incorporation into developments. Meaning someone had to approve absorbing my land. My grandfather, who had been dead for years. I thought that was the twist. It wasn't. He requested extended filing history. Not just my property, the development. The printer ran for almost 10 minutes. 3 other cabins. Same correction process. Same law firm. Same developer. All belonging to people who lived out of state or were absent long term. My stomach tightened. "So they do this regularly?" He didn't answer immediately. "They do it quietly." 2 days later the next piece arrived. Not from the county. From inside the HOA. An email, no message, just an attachment. Audio file. The attorney played it through a small speaker. Muffled voices. Chairs moving. Then clear enough. "HOA president, he's deployed until fall. If we file now, the notice period expires before he returns." Another voice, "And if he contests?" "Developer, he won't." They never do. I didn't react right away. I think part of me still wanted this to be misunderstanding. The attorney didn't. He just wrote one word on his pad. Intent. The next surprise came from someone I barely recognized. A board member from the meeting, the quiet one who never spoke, requested to meet in a diner parking lot. He looked exhausted. He handed me a USB drive. "I thought it was zoning adjustments," he said. "Then they had you arrested." Inside were internal HOA financials. Consulting payments to a company I didn't know until I searched the business registration. Owned by the HOA president. Payments labeled Community Integration Planning. They matched dates of each land correction vote. I didn't feel victorious. I felt stupid for not realizing sooner why they wanted a fast settlement. Money wasn't coming from fines. It was coming from absorbing land into the development footprint, raising property values, then renting or selling access. My cabin wasn't a target. It was inventory. The developer reacted quickly once discovery requests were filed. They sued me. Trespassing. Defamation. Interference with business operations. The attorney smiled when I read it. "Good," he said. I didn't understand why. Because now they're required to produce records to support their claim. They had pulled the fight into court themselves. Power shift. An independent surveyor walked the land a week later. We followed him through brush behind the community fence line. He hammered stakes into the soil where the real boundary sat, dozens of feet outside the HOA map. My cabin had never been inside their property. Not even close. The corrected plat hadn't shifted a line. It had redrawn reality. The story didn't stay private anymore. A reporter called asking for comment about a veteran property dispute. I almost declined. The attorney shook his head. Let them ask questions. Cameras showed up at the gate the next day. Residents who had rented the cabin suddenly wanted refunds. The HOA president refused interviews, which only made clips spread faster. Public pressure grew. And with it, cracks. Another homeowner contacted us. His hunting shed had been labeled storage amenity in early development plans. He never fought it. Didn't know he could. Pattern became proof. The final piece arrived unexpectedly. The county clerk, the same one from my first visit, called. The notarization on the corrected plat used a notary whose license had expired before the filing date. The signature wasn't just forged. The validation was impossible. For the first time since this started, I laughed. Not out of relief. because the structure they built to look official had collapsed under its own weight. The arrest, the lien, the threats, all built on paperwork they assumed no one would ever examine closely. They weren't just betting I wouldn't fight. They were betting I wouldn't understand. And that was the moment the story changed from defending my cabin to proving they'd done this on purpose. The courtroom was fuller than I expected. Not packed, but attentive. Quiet conversation stopped when I walked in. A few people from the neighborhood sat behind me. Someone nodded. I didn't know them. A week ago they watched me get threatened with arrest. Now they were watching the explanation. The HOA attorney opened confidently. Smooth voice, practiced pacing, presenting it as a simple boundary dispute complicated by emotional reaction. For a moment I wondered if the judge might see it that way too. Then my attorney placed the enlarged plat map on the screen. 2 lines. Original boundary, uneven, hand-measured decades ago. Corrected boundary, perfectly straight, swallowing the cabin. The judge leaned forward. "Explain the basis for this correction," she said. The HOA lawyer gestured toward their survey documentation. That's when our surveyor stood. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't argue. He overlaid GPS coordinates onto the map. The 2 properties didn't overlap. Not slightly. Not debatably. They missed by dozens of feet. A murmur moved through the room. First crack. Next came the signature. Side by side on the screen, my grandfather's real signature and the approval signature from the filing. The judge removed her glasses and looked longer than she had at anything so far. The HOA attorney tried to object: phrasing, authentication, procedural timing. Denied. The judge asked a simple question. Is the individual who signed this alive to testify? Silence from their table. Second crack. Then the audio played. The room filled with the recorded meeting. He's deployed until fall. If we file now, the notice period expires. The HOA president stared straight ahead, not blinking. The developer shifted in his seat, whispering urgently to his counsel. The judge didn't interrupt the recording. When it ended, she didn't speak for several seconds. That silence was heavier than any argument. Third crack. My arrest came next. Body cam footage, me standing at my own door, confused, not aggressive. Deputy asking, "They're saying you don't live here?" I heard my own voice answering. I always have. I hadn't remembered how tired I sounded. The judge watched the entire clip. No one objected. No one explained. Then financial records. Payments from the developer to the HOA president's company aligned with the date of each land incorporation vote. The defense tried to frame them as consulting fees. The judge asked what consulting required: a forged acknowledgement signature. No one answered directly. Fourth crack. Finally, the notary record. Expired before the filing date. Invalid authentication. The courtroom atmosphere changed completely. This wasn't messy paperwork anymore. This was fabrication. The HOA attorney's tone shifted from confident to careful. He attempted settlement language mid-hearing, suggesting mutual misunderstanding and proposing dismissal. My attorney didn't respond. He didn't need to. The judge did. She ruled the corrective plat invalid pending further review, the lien unenforceable, and the trespass claim unsupported. But she didn't stop there. She referenced intentional misrepresentation and referred the matter for investigative action. I didn't process it at first. Not until the HOA president's posture finally broke, shoulders dropping for the first time since I met her. The developer stared at the table instead of the judge. The power that had felt absolute at the gate was gone in a sentence. When the gavel struck, it wasn't loud. Just final. No cheering. No speeches. Just a quiet shift in the room, people looking at me differently than they had the day I was cuffed. I hadn't won because I argued better. I won because the truth held longer than their paperwork did. And for the first time since I stepped off that bus, I wasn't the one being told to leave. I went back the next morning. No police tape. No security truck idling near the trees. Just wind moving through the pines the way I remembered. The gate stood open, not ceremonially, not dramatically. Someone had simply disengaged the lock. It almost felt anticlimactic after everything, which somehow made it more real. I walked the path slowly. The porch still creaked on the third step. Inside, dust floated through the sunlight. Furniture exactly where I'd left it, except for small signs strangers had been here, moved chairs, a different coffee mug, a rental tag hanging from a drawer handle. I took it off and set it on the table. For a long minute I just stood there listening. No arguments. No engines. No voices telling me policy or procedure. Quiet again. Later that afternoon, a neighbor, the older woman from the meeting, walked up holding a small stone. My grandfather's boundary marker, cleaned. She apologized. Awkward, sincere. I realized something then. They never really thought I'd come back. Not just from deployment. From being pushed out. I rehung the family photo on the wall. Same place. This time, it felt permanent.